Hey everyone, the one and only again, and we are live, only this time, bringing you one of my favorite types of videos to make, a battery drain test, only this is for the current lineup of the 2019 MacBooks. Now this is an interesting one for me, since I have a Mac for on the go and one for producing videos, so I was interested to see which one would hold up longer battery wise. Additionally, I know many of my viewers are college students, as I once was, and depend on their Macs to help them cram their way to success and get those straight A's, so a MacBook with a long battery is crucial to the everyday life of a dedicated student. As such, here it is. Welcome to my 2019 official MacBook battery drain test, where I test out the battery on the entire lineup of available MacBooks. Let me also inform everyone though that barely today, July 9th, 2019, Apple very quietly updated the 13-inch non-touch bar MacBook Pro models to touch bar MacBook Pros. So now none of the 13-inch MacBook Pros sport the function keys. So basically, every MacBook Pro now has a touch bar, and also the MacBook Air got a spec bump, but I think saddest of all, the 12-inch MacBook has officially been discontinued. A moment of silence for one of my favorite portable machines. It's alright though, we're still doing this test because I'm sure you can still find leftover stock at stores like Best Buy or Amazon. Anyway, this is going to be a good one, as we will be testing a variety of tasks that is more reminiscent of a real world experience, since some of us use our computers for basic web browsing, some may do it for light video editing, and others are glued to social media and have about 20 tabs open at a time. Speaking of, I post regular channel updates and polls so you can vote for my next video right on my social media. So if you haven't yet, definitely follow me there and like my stuff, because that way I feel a bit better about myself and my confidence gets boosted. Alright, you ready for this test? Let's go. So look, here's the deal about MacBooks. Most MacBooks come in a variety of configurations, so it can be a bit confusing for customers that are new to Apple computers. This is precisely why in my next video, I'm going to do a 2019 buying guide, so I can at least try my best to help you decide which MacBook is right for you, so stay tuned for that. The different configurations directly affect battery life. For example, an i9 processor is going to outperform an M3 processor like the one found in the 12-inch MacBook by a long shot on processor-heavy tasks like photo or video editing. Kinda like how Masvidal outperformed Ben Askren in his 5-second bout where he put Askren to sleep via a flying knee. Ouch. Therefore, I made this neat little chart laying down the specs of each of these devices for two reasons. One, because it shows a great visual where you can compare each machine against one another in a concise and elegant way. And two, because some of you guys are ruthless in the comments and berated me for taking too long in discussing the specs. So to remedy that, here you go. It's a win-win for everyone. From left to right, our four belligerents are the 12-inch MacBook, the redesigned MacBook Air from last year, the 13-inch MacBook Pro with Touch Bar, and the 15-inch MacBook Pro with Touch Bar. Apple finally discontinued the old non-Retina MacBook Air, which I think was just a complete joke, since they didn't even bother dropping the price when it was available, still sporting dinosaur specs, a super weak non-Retina display, and I just flat out don't think anyone should have bought it brand new when you had the newly refreshed Air for a bit more money. Anyway, just a couple things to point out. For one, the MacBook Pros have this annoying thing called the Touch Bar. Now, the majority of people would say it's a gimmick, and well, it kind of is. Apple used to force it down your throat on the 13-inch models if you wanted good specs. However, now they all sport the Touch Bar. And two, the Touch Bar is an OLED strip that drains your battery whether you want it or not. It's there. So that's one thing to know about this battery test. That's exactly why I made this video, so disregard Apple's advertised battery life and comment down below which MacBook you think will reign supreme after several grueling hours of putting so much strain on the batteries, using a variety of normal, benign tasks, and also more processor heavy tasks like gaming and light video editing. That's it for the introductions. Let's begin. Okay, so we have our four contestants here lined up looking beautiful as all at 100% juice, ready to run this marathon. For my first test, I decided to go straight in and tap at that processor. I did 3 classic benchmark tests, that being the Geekbench first, then Cinebench, and then the Heaven Graphics benchmark test. I did these right after another, and it was the Cinebench test that noticeably made the fans kick into high gear, and you could tell that's where our Air and 12-inch MacBook had a tougher time. This is also a great time to point out that all 4 machines are all on the same operating system, that being Mac OS Mojave 10.14.5. All 4 MacBooks had the brightness to about 80%. I controlled this by setting brightness to max and then lowering the brightness down 4 whole notches on each machine. I thought this was probably the fairest way to do it. Also, Do Not Disturb mode is on all 4, Bluetooth is turned off, and True Tone was disabled for the MacBooks that have this feature. Auto brightness also as well turned off, and obviously all 4 hooked up to the same Wi-Fi network. So all in all, this is as fair a test as it gets. I tried my best to make this a fair competition, as one setting adjusted differently, like say brightness on 100 versus 80% on the rest, could lead to some misleading results. So after running the 3 benchmarks, we get the following results. The 12-inch MacBook came in at 89%, the Air at 91%, and surprisingly the 13-inch at 86%, and the 15-inch Pro came in at 86% as well. Up next, I threw it back to my university days and am mimicking the endless hours spent typing up papers and researching late at night. So for this test, I pulled up Microsoft Word and a Wikipedia article on Stone Cold Steve Austin, the best goddamn wrestler to ever walk the earth, don't at me. Side by side, cause that's how to work smarter, not harder, with the keyboard slightly lit about 4 notches from 0 on all 4 computers. Again, consistency is key. I turned the keyboard backlight on because when I studied, I prefer to study in a dimly lit room and needed the backlight on the keyboard to let me see. I left the 4 computers like this for an hour, even though my fellow students will know sometimes we'd be up till 5 a.m. studying. But for time's sake, after 60 minutes of Word and researching, we arrive at the following percentages. The 12-inch MacBook came in at 80%, followed by 83% on the Air. Then 81% on the 13-inch and 80% on the 15-inch. So it seems after this test, they are all basically neck and neck. Next up, everyone's favorite thing to do on the internet. Check social media and re-up on some dank memes. When I edit or script, I find myself getting sidetracked by social media and end up spending much longer than I would have liked, browsing endlessly through Instagram and Twitter mainly. Here, I pulled up both my Twitter and Instagram for 60 minutes to see how much it would drain my battery and maybe make me realize the hit I actually take not only time-wise, but battery-wise by browsing on IG and such. At the 30-minute mark, I just switched tabs and went from Twitter to Instagram. So after a full 60 minutes, we arrived to the following results. The 12-inch, 72%. The Air at a healthy 76%. The 13-inch basically catching up at 75%, and the bigger 15-inch Pro at 73%. Moving right along, my next test is for those who are doing exactly what you're doing right now. I'm talking about all of our hours spent on YouTube. YouTube is notorious for draining my iPhone battery, and I was interested to see if it would translate to similar performance results on the MacBooks. As a content creator myself, not only do I upload videos to YouTube, but I also watch YouTube religiously. Sometimes to the point where I start with a tech video and somehow end up watching a video about an old dude eating a watermelon, and I know I'm not the only one. As such, for the next 90 minutes, I left all 4 MacBooks on the ever popular and ultra intriguing fireplace video while I went to grab a nice caramel macchiato at Dunkin' Donuts, and when I got back, I recorded the results. Here they are. The 12-inch MacBook at 56%. We see a big drop here, but then again, it was an hour and a half on YouTube. Air at 61%, the 13-inch MacBook swung back and took the lead at 62% battery left, and the 15-inch dropped to 59%. Our 5th test, I decided to tap into the processors once again and have them work overdrive with some light video editing, as I know many creative professionals use their MacBooks in a wide variety of ways. Here, I took a 2-minute clip recorded at 4K 60 frames per second and edited it with my subscribe animation equally on all 4 machines and exported it using the same compressor settings. Speaking of subscribe animation, would you look at that? If you're finding this video useful or entertaining, consider subscribing to my channel, as it helps me out a lot, and so that you don't miss any of my future unboxings, reviews, and in-depth tests just like this one. Man, that subscribe animation was slick, not even gonna lie. Anyway, obviously the pros edged out since they have much faster processors and much better graphics cards. I let them sit idle once they were done and only finished the test once the last MacBook finished exporting. This is a perfect time to also mention MacBook battery cycles. You can gauge at your MacBook battery by seeing how healthy your battery is in the settings. Simply click the apple at the top left, hit About This Mac, and hit System Report. under the power tab on the left, you'll see your battery cycle. As you can see, my 15-inch Pro is approaching 70 cycles since I use it most for video editing, while the Air, 12-inch, and 13-inch Pro are well under 50. Apple recommends that at 1000 cycles, you should consider replacing your battery, so as you can see here, even with the Pro having the most cycles at around 70, battery degradation is negligible here, as all 4 batteries are pretty much at peak condition. The way the MacBook gets this number is by the number of times you drain and charge up your device. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean 100% to 0%. Rather, let's give an example. Say you're at 100%. You drain your battery to 50% and then recharge, and the next day do the exact same thing, drain it from 100% to 50%, then that will result in just 1 cycle, since cumulatively 100% of the battery was technically drained between both days. According to Apple, your MacBook is designed to hold 80% of its charge at 1000 charges, so if it seems your MacBook shuts off for no apparent reason, check this setting out, as it's likely more than 1000 cycles and needs to be replaced. At the conclusion of this test, you'll see that the Air and 12-inch took a massive beating to battery, dropping way more than I had expected. The 12-inch dropped down to 30%, ouch. The Air down to 32%. Surprisingly, the 13-inch Pro never forgot about cardio day, and after the export still had 48%, while the 15-inch came in at 38%. Shout out to the 13-inch for holding its own. Still though, for what they've been through, all 4 are still holding out pretty well, as it's just a back and forth between them. Now again, this is just a 2-minute short clip. Most video editors are editing much longer clips, but again, for the sake of time, we want to get a wide variety of tests here. Is the MacBook you picked to win at the beginning of this video still winning? Nearing the end here, what I wanted to test next was to see the battery performance comparing Safari and Chrome. As some of you may know, Chrome is a huge battery drainer, but I think we can all agree Chrome is 100 times better than Safari, so we kind of just eat up the L on battery life. Here, what I did was open up 5 different tabs doing several different things, like playing some Motionless in White at half volume on all 4 machines on YouTube, opening up Facebook, the Apple website, ESPN, and Yahoo Finance, so I know how the stock market did. I did this for 20 minutes and replicated it exactly, only this time using Google Chrome again for 20 minutes to see if Chrome used up more battery. So, let's get these results. So with Safari being up first, let's see what we get after these 20 minutes. We have the 12-inch coming in at 26%, the Air at 28%, the 13-inch Pro at 44%, and the 15-inch Pro at 34%. So we see a 4% drop across the board on all 4 machines using Safari. Do you think Chrome will have a more significant drop? If you said yes, then you're correct. After 20 minutes on Chrome, replicating the same exact test, we have the 12-inch coming in at 20%, only a fifth of the battery left. Air slipping a little more, down to 21%. The 13-inch Pro at 39%, and the 15-inch Pro dropping to a quarter of battery, 25%. So that is a 6% drop for the 12-inch, a 7% drop on the Air, 5% drop for the 13-inch, and a 9% drop on the 15-inch. So my hypothesis was correct. Thus, lesson learned. If you'll be away from your charger and need to squeeze out as much juice as possible, definitely hit up Safari instead of Google Chrome. For my second to last test, we have a gaming test, and here what I did is play this racing game called Top Speed that is free on the Mac App Store that I thought was suitable for this test. It's not a game that is going to seriously rip this battery to pieces, especially the 12-inch and Air, since they don't have a dedicated graphics card, and thus will consume a ton of battery on other games like Fortnite. Besides, Macs aren't really meant for gaming, as I personally recommend gaming on a PC unless you have an iMac Pro with the Vega graphics cards. This game here in particular is nowhere near being graphically intensive, but still shows some light gaming some users may experience here and there. What I did is time myself playing the game for 10 minutes on each machine while leaving the others idle. That way each machine got to game for 10 minutes and remain fair and consistent. Now I know most players game for hours, sometimes days on end, which if you do bro, you should probably consider finding a new hobby, but for the sake of time, 10 minutes on each device or 40 minutes total of me playing, we arrive at the following percentages. The 12-inch on its last legs at 13%, the Air at 15%, the 13-inch MacBook fell to 33%, and the 15-inch is looking a little sloppy at 18%. We are close to 7 hours into the test, approaching the championship round, and I am honestly surprised they're still up and running despite everything we've put them through. For my last and final test, you already know what it is. It's what I do every night before going to bed, or what you kids like to call Netflix and chill, even though it's more chilling going on rather than watching actual Netflix. Yes sir, we're leaving these computers on Netflix watching everyone's favorite show, The Office, and if you don't like The Office, something wrong with you. This is it. I'm leaving these running until they all tap out. Our first soldier finally fell, tapped out because it ran out of juice. The 12-inch MacBook goes at 7 hours and 18 minutes. At this point, the Air had 3% left, the roided up 13-inch Pro at 21%, and the 15-inch Pro still with 5% left. It wasn't long after the 12-inch fell that his bigger cousin, the Air, falls as well at 7 hours and 30 minutes, not long after. So after the Air died, the 13-inch Pro, some freak of nature, still at a nice and powerful 18%, and the 15-inch still showing some heart at 2%, holding on to dear life. Only 10 minutes later, the MacBook Pro 15-inch finally met its fate, coming in at an impressive 7 hours and 40 minutes of life for having the biggest screen. Not bad if you ask me, while the 13-inch Pro just has to showboat and still running with 16% battery, and insanely, after more than an hour after I was trying to go to bed, still recording at 3 a.m. for you guys, and in the name of experimenting, 8 hours and 53 minutes later, the 13-inch MacBook Pro throws in the towel, showing the other computers without a doubt which computer takes the reigning, defending, undisputed title of MacBook battery drain test king. You guys, give it up for the 13-inch MacBook Pro with Touch Bar. So what have we learned today? I learned a lot. For one, MacBooks will undoubtedly get you through your daily workload. I love my MacBooks. The only thing I feel Apple has to do is finally switch up the keyboards, which I heard they are rumored to be doing to attract older MacBook customers back to the Apple Store. And second, I kind of expected the 12-inch to come in last for two reasons. One, it has extremely outdated specs, so any processor-heavy task would see its battery take a big hit. And two, the 12-inch MacBook just has some interesting hardware. It has no fan, but runs on the M3 processor, which is very power efficient, but this means that during things like the export test, it was surely going to take a big hit on battery. Speaking of battery, the MacBook 12-inch has some even more interesting hardware, having a terraced battery cell, which I find super interesting. This was done to achieve that all-day battery in such a small chassis, so careful consideration was taken to take advantage of every millimeter of space imaginable to squeeze out the most battery. The Air wasn't too far behind either, and this is likely also to do with the weaker chip as compared to its older brothers, the Pros, so during heavy video editing, rendering, or photo editing, with a weaker chip, you'll see your machine work overdrive just as the 12-inch and Air did in this test. As for the Pros, the 13-inch clearly did way better, but why? I think for one reason is that it has a much smaller display to output less pixels. In the end, I think that's what made the bigger difference. While the 15-inch does have a bigger battery, after these series of tests, it's evident that if you want a MacBook with the absolute best and most versatile battery, pick up the 13-inch for sure. Well guys, that's been it for me. I wanted this test to encompass a wide variety of use cases, not just a simple web browsing test, but rather show the versatility of each device battery and how they'd perform. Again, I can't stress enough how much specs matter. If all you're going to do is browse the internet and check Facebook, specs don't matter, and I'd recommend probably the Air if you plan to use your MacBook for just that. However, creating music on Logic Pro, video editing on Final Cut, or editing masterful photography on Photoshop all demands a great processor for the most efficiency. Thus, configuring your MacBook with better graphics cards and chipsets in theory should yield to different results, but of course, it's almost impossible to test every single variation and configuration. But I hope this video at least gives you an idea of how each device is to be expected to perform. If you found this video entertaining or useful, destroy that like button and make sure you subscribe, as my next video will be a MacBook buying guide where I try to tell you the disadvantages and advantages to each device and who each machine is really made for. These tests take hours of filming and even days of preparation and editing, so any love you show to this video would be greatly appreciated. That's it. I'm clocking out of this one, guys. I'll catch everyone in the next one. Peace.